Jā, paldies pagaidījāt. Tad šīs divas dienas Rīgā bija delegācija Eiropas Parlamenta īpašai komitejai Finanšu, noziegumu, izvairīšanās no nodokļu maksāšanas un nodokļu apiešanas jautājumos. Un tātad pēc šīs vizītes komiteja gan sagatavo, protams, ziņojumu par šo vizīti, un arī šīs vizītes secinājumi tiek, protams, iekļauti šīs komitejas gala ziņojumā šā gada rudenī. Un es jums stādīšu priekšā divus galvenos runātājus. Tas ir delegācijas vadītājs un arī komitejas priekšsēdētājs Petrs no Čehijas un Jeppe Kofoda no Dānijas, kurš ir līdzautors šim komitejas gala ziņojumam. Tad šajā komitejā darbojās arī divi deputāti no Latvijas, Roberts Zīle un Krišāns Kariņš. Viņi tepat ir klāt, tā kā es tad dodu vārdu Petram Ježakam par pirmajiem secinājumiem šajās divās dienās.
Thank you. Very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Petr Ježek and I chair the EP Special Committee on Financial Crimes, Tax Evasion and Tax Avoidance. This committee was set up in order to work for 1 year on these issues in the EU and then produce a report, of which Jeppe Kofod is one of the two co-rapporteurs, on our findings and recommendations, whether there should be some new measures taken at the EU level, legislation, whether we should implement it better, apply it better and enforce it better, and how to do it. Well, our methods of our work are hearings, documents, but also mission to some countries, either in the EU or outside. And I don't know whether you are familiar with whom we've had meetings here in Riga. We started our mission yesterday, and we concluded a while ago with a meeting with the finance minister and some of her colleagues, including acting director of General of the State Revenue Service. We met in the Parliament, chairman of the Defense Internal Affairs and Corruption Prevention Committee, deputy chairman of Budget and Finance Committee. We met, of course, chairman of Financial and Capital Market Commission, Mr. Putniņš, chairperson of FIU of Latvijā, acting governor of the Bank of Latvijā, representatives of the Finance Latvia associations, bank representatives, ABLV Bank liquidators, and also representatives of Register of Enterprises who are responsible for the Register of Beneficial Owners. Also, we talked to some journalists, representatives of civil society, and we were in the port. We talked with free port authorities because part of our mandate is also to look at a special schemes which enable some tax deductions, and in this respect we talk also with the customs authorities. So that's been our 2 days program here in Riga, and I would, of course, when we will come back to the European Parliament, we will discuss what we've seen and heard here in the political groups. We will read documents we were given. We will consult, and we will reflect what we've seen in the final report. But very preliminary, I would share with you my feelings from what we've seen here. I think the overall impression is that Latvia clearly realized that the situation in the banking sector, some of its aspects, was not sustainable anymore, and since that there has been quite an effort to try to improve the situation. To be more concrete, I think that one of the most significant achievements are to reduce non-residents' deposits, which in 2000, from the peak which was in 2015, when domestic and EU deposits made 65% of deposits in banks in Latvia, and now they account for 90% domestic and EU deposits. So it's a quite significant shift and very important. Also, it seems that the number of shell companies was significantly reduced, and a number of them was banned. Well, also it seems that judicial system, investigation, criminal proceeding are being more active in the area of money laundering, and that hopefully some concrete result will be seen soon. Also, we've learned that there is effort to reinforce significantly capabilities dealing in this area with anti-money laundering crimes. So that will be probably my introduction, and I would pass the floor to Jeppe for the rapporteur of the committee.
Thank you so much, and also for my part, thank you for coming and listening to us. Chairman has already said our purpose and preliminary findings of our mission here to Latvia, to Riga. I would just reiterate a few things. First of all, we look also from the whole EU side how well we are implementing measures against money laundering in the European Union, in member states. And here we see, of course, a lot of problems, challenges. Both the laws, the regulations that we adopt in EU, whether it's transposed into national laws and regulation, but also whether it's properly enforced by authorities. And these weaknesses we see in many countries, not only here, but we see some big challenges and weaknesses. Money laundering as a financial crime is a very serious financial crime, harming society. People, can cost tragedies and so on. So I think it's very important to underline that financial crimes and physical crimes are as serious. So therefore it's something we should take more serious. Concretely, we have seen, of course, we met with the liquidators of ABLV, and we also talked to the banking associations about the business models that was here for a number of years that allowed high, as the chairman said, a high level of foreign deposits and foreign customers, and not proper due diligence, know your customer policies and implementation of anti-money laundering requirements and standards. So that's really a thing, and we need to look deep into that. Crimes has been committed, definitely, and we also I hope that criminals responsible for these crimes and financial crimes, they also are facing justice at some point, because it's important for society, for people, that they see that justice also goes for people who do financial crimes. We will bring back the findings, but we also would continue our work with our report, and that report will be worked on by me and my co-rapporteur, and going to be adopted in the spring of next year. So we'll still have some time to think about our findings, but also to have a dialogue with the Latvian authorities, with Latvian Parliament, with Latvian stakeholders on what we've seen here. But overall, we see new measures has been adopted by by Parliament and government and by authorities that is going really in the right direction. That's positive. But we also know that, for example, the evaluation of Moneywall see that there's still a lot of challenges, very serious challenges, before Latvia is effectively fighting money laundering. So we also discussed that a lot with our counterparts here. So thank you so much. I look forward to questions for you.
Jā, mums tagad tiešām vieta jautājumiem, kāds 10 minūtes pirms publiski vietas lidmašīna laiks, kāds lūdzu.
Tad es pareizi saprotu, ka patiesībā tas mudinājums ir līdzīgs, kā pat izteica arī Moneywall un valsts priekšsēdētājs, vairāk pievērsties tieši šai tiesu pusē, šai izmeklēšanas pusē un rādīt reālus rezultātus sodīšanā.
Yeah, if I may, true. I mean, one thing is to have the right laws and regulation in place. Another thing is to implement the laws against money laundering and financial crimes, implemented in both the financial system, on the side of supervisory authorities and financial intelligence units and so on, having proper resources, having proper staff to do the job, but also when it comes to investigation and prosecution. So law enforcement, judiciary need to be strengthened, and that's also why I said very clearly, I mean, crimes has been committed, serious money laundering crimes, financial crimes, and therefore criminals should be found and prosecuted and bring to justice. And we see that challenge not only in Latvia but overall. And I want to say, sometimes in Europe we maybe are better talking about prevention of crimes, but in the US, for example, where this committee also went in July, they are maybe better on law enforcement, and we saw that actually as an example here with the ABLV. You know, it was US authorities that did something which our own authorities in Europe, in Latvia, should have done previously.
Well, I would perhaps said something which I should have highlighted at the very beginning. Also, that our colleagues from Latvia are not here only because they are Latvians, but they are both very active in the area we are talking about. Mr. Karinj was one of two co-rapporteurs in the negotiations on anti-money laundering directive, and Mr. Zila is the first vice chair of this committee. So they are committed to the fight against money laundering, tax evasion, tax avoidance quite significantly. Well, I think that it shouldn't come as a surprise that we arrive more or less at the same conclusion as Moneywall when it comes to judiciary, but also in other areas. But our role is a bit different. Of course, Moneywall produced a very detailed report, although it gathered data almost a year ago, but still, report I think it's very valid. But our task at the end is after we map the situation to try to evaluate whether there's a need for any changes in the EU area. So we are, of course, not specifically dealing with Latvia, but we should, let's say, learn the lesson from what's going on here and in some other countries, and then come up with overall European solution. And perhaps one can say that we almost at every meeting we heard that Latvia is a small country. Well, I would say that yes, it's a country with not many inhabitants rather, but we see that in the EU it's the case of number of countries which do not have many inhabitants, that they have either specific problems. Here it was non-resident deposits and some related issues, or they have some special schemes which may disrupt the single market. Both cases impact on the whole of the EU. And there's a relevant question which is debated whether countries which lower number of inhabitants have capabilities, proper capabilities and possibilities to fight efficiently against money laundering, or whether it would help if there is a certain European institution, body, or whether the powers of European Central Bank are more explicitly expanded in the area of anti-money laundering. So that's what we will be discussing in the coming months as well.
Man jautājums ir sekojošs, vai jūs tad varat apgalvot, ka, piemēram, Latvijā šīs problēmas ar naudas atmaskāšanu un čausu kompānijām ir lielākas nekā Eiropas Savienībā kopumā, jo, piemēram, ir tāds arī viedoklis, ka šobrīd Latvijā mēs ar to jautājumu cīnāmies, bet, piemēram, šīs pašas čausu kompānijas pārceļās uz Kipru, uz Lielbritāniju, vai nav tā?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's clear from the numbers that we all know that the number of non-resident deposits here and the flow of money, and also looking at what currencies, dollars and so on, you can see that definitely the Latvian financial system has been exposed to money laundering in a scale compared to the size of the country, which is, I think, hard to find many other places in Europe even. But that doesn't mean that you're absolutely right. We see that when it comes to shell companies or complex corporate structures to hide your assets or evade taxes or do money laundering or corruption, financial crimes, it's taking place in many European countries. And you mentioned the UK as an example, and there we also, of course, look into it. We want, as the chairman said, to strengthen the European enforcement of policies against financial crimes, including money laundering. And one of the things we have looked at is the anti-money laundering directives that has been adopted and the implementation of member states. And there we see big problems. Actually, we have seen previously in the Parliament concluded that there's been maladministration by member states and not sincere cooperation in the field of money laundering and fighting financial crimes. So we want to see how we can have a more coherent implementation throughout EU, also outside Latvia, of course. Then also when it comes to, Chairman mentioned it, the risk reduction measures in completing the banking union, I mean, definitely the European Central Bank should have a much stronger role. When it comes to bank insolvency and liquidation rules, also learn from the lesson here, we need much better harmonization in EU with that. And also, for example, things like more clarity on when can you revoke banking license and so on, because that should be something which should be done when banks are violating the laws of society. And we see that banks, not only here but also other places. I'm from Denmark. I know my biggest bank in Denmark now has the biggest ongoing anti-money laundering case. Other banks like Deutsche Bank has been previously involved in these things. So we know that it's a phenomenon we need to fight effectively also on a European level. So you're right about that.
Yeah, there is not much to add. Well, we heard that also from our interlocutors that if they fight money laundering properly, the suspicious money flows may appear somewhere else. Well, it may very well be the case. As Jeppe said, we are looking for a European solution. But I think that there's one difference, and that's why we both talk about size of a country. Well, if there is the same number of shell companies, foreign deposits, suspicious flows, financial flows in a country with 2 million or in a country of 60 million, so you can clearly feel the difference. Well, in the country, smaller country, it would be very disproportionate with all the negative impacts. But that doesn't mean that we are not trying to find the European solution which would cover the ground everywhere in